Hello and welcome to the Bookish Rambles podcast with me, Holly.
And me, Becky.
And this week, I don't even know what we would clarify. Like, we usually say that we have a writing episode or a reading episode. It's been a bit up and down because we've had people on who are writers, but we've been discussing their books. And this one is kind of the same thing, where we have actually written a short story, each of us, based off of the same prompt. Now, I'll read the prompt. The frog was supposed to turn into a handsome prince, not whatever this was.
Reedsy, I think.
Reedsy.
I sent you the link, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Reedsy. They've got loads of prompts, so I just selected. We had such an issue finding a prompt that we both liked. I think this is the one we settled on just because it was kind of weird. Because I think weirder prompts are more fun to work with than just generic ones.
Yeah, I think sometimes the problem with prompts is that they're just so unspecific that they're not inspiring. You look at them and you're just like, that could be any story in the world, actually. We basically wanted just to write like the same prompt and to compare our stories. And so that's what we did. I guess it's going to be, again, a mix of a reading and a writing episode where we will talk about both of these things. We'll talk about what we like about each other's stories, but we'll also go into, I guess, like little things, little tips and tricks.
The idea of this story is I see a lot of writers. So initially when I was talking about this idea, a lot of writers get worried that when they have the same idea that the book is going to be really similar. So I wanted to show that even though you have the same idea, the result will always be different, because a lot of people put their own experiences in or things that they like in. And I can already tell that our books are like our short stories are completely different. And so it's kind of just to prove a point, really, and to show that it's not scary if someone's got the same idea as you. It's going to be completely different because at the end of the day, it's what you as a writer use and utilize to make the story unique.
Your special sauce.
Special sauce. Where's the lamb sauce?
It's like we had this idea and we were like, yes, that's amazing. We got to do this. And we finally did it. And so, yeah, it is definitely from Reedsy. I don't think there's a specific author of it. But as I said, it is the frog was supposed to turn into a handsome prince, not whatever this was. And we have definitely gone very different. I'm going to go first because mine's the longest. I don't know how long this is going to take. I apologize for my reading voice. I have a cold. But then we will also read yours, I guess, and then compare them, which should be fine because we both have them. And we can leave them maybe in a link or something. It is about 2,000 words, which was the sort of upper range of our thing. Yours was, I think, the shorter end of our range.
Yeah, I think that's just personal preference. I don't like making short stories too long, to be fair.
You also made you made a very conscious choice to cut it short. We'll get to that. We'll get to it. But basically, this is my short story. There is no title. Neither of them have titles because we were a bit lazy with that. The green skin slips away from my pursed lips as the frog transforms. I step back quickly, once, twice, and watch the prince's shape form in a haze of smoke and sparks. The form will be that of my future husband, if his promises were legitimate. It's stupid to be hoping he's handsome, or that he will have kind eyes that wrinkle with his smile, but it would have been stupid for me to kiss a frog and expect anything before I heard this one speaking to me, telling me that all it would take for the life of my dreams was one little kiss. I look at the strange pulling as the tiny body transforms into something more, as the magic that had seemed impossible outside of picture books begins to weave itself through the air in a mystifying display. Then, poof! The smoke clears as I waft the remains with my hand, the smell of it acrid like burnt hair. In front of me is the frog turn something. Not human, that's for sure. A third step back comes out of instinct. The fourth, a leg thrust back to steady myself. The green skin is still there, as smooth as it had been to the touch a moment ago. But it stretches across a tall and impossibly slim body of bones cut into angles like an axe chopping through wood, hard and furious strokes that splinter under the contact. His eyes are the same deep black, but there is no end up to the irises. The only difference in coloration comes from his lazy blinks. The hands he holds up in pleasure, seeing them after months of having frog fingers, are equally long and insect-like as the rest of him. 4 fingers, including the thumb, turning to sharp claws at their ends. They match the colour of his crown, stained bone, sturdy and with proof of its longevity in the age that it so clearly possesses. Beneath the crown is his hair, tufts of it dark and almost wet in how they glisten, hanging heavy with little movement despite the rotations of his head. His pale, thin lips have points that carve into hollow cheeks. Webs of black veins stick out against his skin, which sunlight reveals to be translucent. What light does pierce through the canopy sends spots of brightness across him and turns him into something else from the stories of magic and mischief. Bog creatures and dwellers of scummy lakes craving the marrow from human bones, with teeth sharp enough to crack us open. His curiosity at seeing himself, the true version that I had not known till now, does little to give his face a softness worthy of admiration. Instead, I feel fear, the cold dread that makes my hands tremble and my stomach watery. My throat closes up with every inch of him that I lay my eyes on. Despite all of this and the strange wings on his back that I had first assumed to be a cloak, their fluid motions so at odds with the jarringly sharp stiffness of the rest of him. I can tell just from a glance that his clothes are well crafted, a silk shirt and leather trousers that fit too well to be anything but tailored. Shoes that are longer in the toe than most men I know would ever wear, but otherwise normal. I suppose the claws are on both his hands and feet, which should terrify me but makes me respect his dedication to wearing proper clothing. He has no accessories besides the crown on his head, a thick signet ring around one finger, and the wings that have now straightened like a kite against the wind. The wings are not bird-like, however, but remind me more of the fins of a fish, fragile and malleable at the same time. It's probably true that he is a prince and that he does intend to marry me. What that means for me, I don't know. What are you? I don't mean to ask, but my feet don't let me run, and his eyes are fixed on me in a curious but calm way that suggests I won't meet my death today. His response is slow to be given, a careful consideration put into the phrasing, or perhaps his violent instincts being reined in by fervent reminders that I gave him his life back. I am a Mogra. If you know more about my kind without me having to tell you, I'll be very impressed, but then I already am. I don't. I stand taller. Already I feel the test, even if I didn't intend it as one. How do Mogra live? We live in trees. Not this kind. He laughs at my confusion, the briefest glance at the mangroves not escaping his notice. Though there are something to look at, aren't they? Lucky me being turned into a creature with such beautiful surroundings. I wouldn't call the lake beautiful. Water almost brown everywhere, with only a handful of clear spots near the thicker plantings of reeds and bulrushes. Still, to rub salt in his wound strikes me as cruel, and I am faced with the truth that he didn't lie to me. I hadn't thought it necessary to ask what he was when he looks like a frog. In fairy tales, it is always a handsome prince. We live in a different land under there. Don't worry, you won't drown, as long as you can hold your breath for a minute. The deeper you go, the closer to the surface you swim. The trees over there are much bigger than these, and grown by the magic that sustains us. Did you not want to know how I became what I was? I was little more concerned that you might be vicious. Instantly flooded by regret, I step back and blanch at him openly. He laughs. It's probably a wise thing to know. No, we're not especially vicious, though we do get quite feisty with the last of the spring's rain. It makes us feel powerful, like the nature of the gods. Your gods, anyway. An outdated concept, one not practiced for centuries, to my knowledge. Not commonly, anyway. Still, it intrigues me. See, we're magical when we're in our home, sustained by the deity that keeps us well and safe. Our homes grow for us when we decide it's time to move on, take our own path. We hunt fish, we catch deer and stags, different than you know them, but more delicious. Every bite is like taking a walk on a rainbow in the mist and seeing the earth below with every step. Looking back at him, I have the urge to be skeptical, to resist whatever he says and walk away like it's all a hallucination from my confused mind, the strange oasis in the woodland I had gotten lost in. There is nothing but the bottom of the pond down below the water. How did you become a frog? I stayed out here too long. My magic ran out and my form was turned into something more acceptable for a human's eyes. But you see, it takes a little bit of magic to get home again. Swimming that long, even as an aquatic creature, it tires you. Tiny little limbs Flailing. So when you said you'd marry me, you'd be fine with me. As you can see, the interaction of you turning me back, it's the sort of simple magic that lasts long enough to get us both home. A gesture of goodwill and trust. I wasn't lying. You'd be happy there. We have a lot of jobs to do, any you like. My home would grow to suit your needs, and you'd be euphoric after just one bite of our food. I know you might look at me and see a monster, and the same for my friends, but I'm their prince. You'd be safe there, and eventually you would come to see it as home. I do. The sun is setting behind him. A strong orange glow comes through the leaves lower in the sky, bathing him in an almost human light. To be truthful, I believe him. I wish I didn't, and I think it'd be wiser not to, but he doesn't have anything to him that makes me feel in danger. Not when I look away. Even just staring at him now, his face is not as painfully stretched across his bones, his arms more graceful than sinewy, and his silk shirt clings to a torso not emaciated in size. First impressions can be tough, but the more I look at him, the less awful he seems. I cast a glance back at the pond and find myself thinking the same thing about its waters, enticing and shimmering with light like the surf of the oceans. What about my life here? I sigh, not different on the surface than the kind I would make, but richer. The same way that some instruments sound cheap and hollow while others ring in your bones like they're played by a god. You could come back. You're not ever going to become a Mogra because you live among them. And the food we have there, you could bring some, take it and use its magic to get back. Why didn't you do that? I did. A simple shrug. I stayed here for 3 weeks, got lost in the mountains, and then right at the end, poof. The same wording I had used, albeit in my head. It feels like a sign, but there's that last call to normalcy. Last thing I need to be sure of. What if I change my mind? I won't hold you there as a prisoner. My wife is supposed to become a symbol of hope and peace. To be there willingly would set the best example, and to become part of the community would be to inspire them. Truth be told, as much as I would treat you with all respect and love, I have never yearned for marriage. It is expected. I'm sure I could come to love you, but until I know you, you have no need to fear about turning me down. With the shake of my head, eyes closed as I think one final time about what it is I'm about to do, what it means, I turn to him head on. I will. Wonderful. And since I haven't said it yet, he mutters, taking my hand. Thank you for saving me. I know how insane it must have felt. Now take a big breath and swim as hard as you can. Wading into the pool of water, I smell the earthiness and the sweet flowers that float along the surface. That is the last thing I will smell of my world for a while, I think, and follow him into the depths until the light disappears almost completely. I close my eyes tight, expecting a hit to my head as we bounce off the floor and open them when I feel water slipping off my face as air floods my desperate lungs. He looks at me with a dripping face, broken into a joyful grin. Welcome to the valley.
Yeah, that's very different from mine. Completely different direction.
Blind reactions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went for a sort of fantasy, slightly not medieval, but like historic.
With a bit of the monster. It really reminds me of, have you ever seen a Japanese kappa?
Hang on. Hang on.
Kappa. That's what I had in my head when you were describing him.
I mean, he isn't that, but I get why. And that's really
funny.
No,
he's not that. It's about different, but that's they live in water, so I was just kind of getting the same vibe as like that kind of creature. That's what I had in my head.
1 second. I need to.
What have you found? Oh yeah, that's it.
Not quite.
Yeah.
Imagine. You read yours?
So I didn't title like that the prompt. I used the prompt as the first line, which I think's a bit different.
Yeah. For anyone who isn't reading, I titled mine with the prompt.
Whoever isn't reading, do you mean watching?
No, because some people listen to it and then they'll read it separate, I guess.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
But if they basically just if you can't see it, the prompt, I used it as the title instead of in it. But Becky used it as the first line, which I felt really bad when I saw that you did that because you posted it on TikTok. Is that where I saw it? And I saw it and I was like, that's your story. I know what that is. But
I mean, I did put it, yeah. You only saw a little bit though, because you haven't seen all of it.
Yeah, only like I read the first line and then I stopped myself.
So yeah, this is my story is about 1,200 words, so it's very different. So yeah, let's go. The frog was supposed to turn into a handsome prince, not whatever this was. I didn't even know what I was staring at first. There's 2 acts there, I just noticed. The tale had always gone that you kissed the frog and a handsome prince appeared. Yes, I hadn't believed the fairy tale either, but I had been curious. I mean, curiosity killed the cat. Maybe I had been a little too drunk. Maybe I had thought that it would have to be a joke. Never did I think in my wildest dreams that something would actually happen. It had. But here a guy was standing, looking a little lost himself. He didn't look like he belonged in my kitchen. He was scratching his head like a cat would scratch an itch that it couldn't get rid of. Where am I? He asked. His voice sounded American. I didn't know how to respond, only taking a step back. He was dressed in high-waisted jeans and a white top. Who are you? I stammered. My words slurred. The alcohol was probably still in my system. He rubbed his head and then looked up, and I could get a better look at his face. Young, late 20s, just like myself. His face was mostly clean-shaven, and there was a white faded scar across his jaw. Clear brown eyes, not a line by them. He didn't look like he had worked a hard day in his life. Where am I? He repeated as he stared at me. His gaze was steady, something like hate almost spewing in his eyes. I hadn't been looked at that since I'd burned Joseph Jones' homework in year 8. That had been a harmless prank. They shouldn't have let us mess with Bunsen burners. My house, I said. I can see that. You're British. The bar. The memories are all jumbled. I was at the bar and now I'm here. You don't remember? I asked. I would have thought that someone would have remembered being a frog. Remember what? You were a frog, I cried out. This was too much now. The alcohol was leaving my system and reality had now set in. Animals don't turn into people. He looked at me as if I'd grown another 3 heads. I should be the one looking at him like that. How could he not remember? Perhaps I had fallen asleep and this was a drunken dream. But with me sobering up, I knew that this new reality had come crashing down upon me. Great, I've been kidnapped by a crazy chick who thinks I was a frog. He rubbed his face and sighed, looking around the kitchen. Do you have a telephone anywhere? Should I pass him my phone? He carried on looking around and I reached into my back pocket. I'm not going to hurt you. You don't need to pull a taser on me, he said, standing perfectly still. I'm getting my phone? A telephone out of your pocket. He cocked his head like a dog. I pulled out my phone and he stared at it. That's a telephone? Who do you want me to call? He clutched his head again. I don't remember. There was someone I needed to talk to. When I was leaving the bar, there was a woman. The images are so hazy. I need some more time. Listen, you're going to have to think of your number or else you're going to have to leave. I don't know who you are. Perhaps I was a little too harsh, but everything didn't make any sense. Where would I go? Find somewhere? He looked at me and he looked like he was about to cry. It was rare for a guy to cry. Most of the time they punched walls in anger instead, like my younger brother who was always getting angry at his video games. Several controllers had already been wrecked. I took a deep breath. Could I really explain everything again? I didn't believe it myself. Nothing made sense. Yet a guy was standing in my kitchen. Fine, I sighed. I guess we could start with your name? He looked at me, his face completely blank. I can't remember. He couldn't even remember his name. This was starting to become a headache. Is there anything else you remember? I leaned on the wall. My legs were starting to ache now and my stomach felt like it was going to churn. The alcohol might come back up. A pond? I keep seeing a pond on the bar, but that's it. It's so fuzzy. I can't make any sense of it. That's because you were a frog, I muttered under my breath. He blinked. That's twice you've said that now. People don't turn into animals, he said with a laughterless laugh. I thought that too. You were a frog. The guy clutched his head again and looked like he wanted to scream. There was a pain. I was a frog, he mumbled, looking at the kitchen tiles. Someone did this to me. I left the bar and she was outside. She said something. And then the pond. It's like everything's a movie being played fast. Nothing makes sense. So now you remember all of a sudden I shook my head? Why couldn't this be a dream? You believe me? Yeah, it's still blurry, but it's true. Magic's real. The one sentence I never thought would come out of somebody's mouth. My brain's still struggling with that one. Mine is too, and somehow I'm in England where you have weird devices that you call phones. I still don't know how you've never seen a phone before. I paused for a moment and then something curious dawned in my mind. How long did you think you were a frog? It can't have been long. What are frog lifespans? What year is it? It must have only been a couple of months. 2025, I replied. His face grew cold and he turned away from me. He clutched his head again and sweat began to bead along his brow. He could talk quite well and seemed sort of adjusted to the world, so it couldn't have been more than a couple of years that he was a frog. I wanted to know, how long? How long were you a frog? I asked, playing with my fingers. He froze and then turned to me with a smile that didn't sit right on his face, like it was trying to lie. Liars were so easy to spot. I was one of them after all. I'm not sure. Maybe 2 years? He was stuttering. Then how do you not know what a mobile phone is? He froze again and then gave a defeated sigh. I suppose it would have been possible. What would be possible? A moment. Then he turned around and walked over to me. He wasn't tall, only a couple of inches taller than me. I had never been tall anyway, only 5'3". That I wasn't a frog for a couple of months. I was born in 1952, and the last time I remember, it was 1986.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. I kind of had the idea that this guy had been cursed by a witch, and he'd been cursed to just stay as a frog because he did something, made the witch mad. Breaking the kiss. She didn't think anyone would kiss a frog, because who would do that in their right mind? And so the girl has broken his curse. But I love the concept of people being cursed, but then ending up in a different time period. So I kind of combine them together.
I mean, it's very like a time warp. It's just so fun. But I do see what you mean. It's very different.
I noticed when I'm reading it that I kept saying rubbed his face. I've used that too much. Well, this is a first draft. So reading that out loud, I've used it 3 times and I'm like, I need to not read that out now. That's the problem with like my brain, because it's such an editing brain. It like just wants to get rid of everything.
Yeah. I think with me as well, like, part of the problem was that I was like, how much effort do I want to put into editing this when it's literally like for the podcast? And because I knew that I would just get like really stuck into doing it. I feel like it's quite difficult when especially when you're reading something out, because you never read something out flawlessly. You never read out exactly the way that it's written. So like, why spend so much time like fixing like a tiny set? You know what I mean? It just, yeah.
And then it makes you wonder, right? How do audiobook narrators do it?
Honestly, so
Did they do it in sessions?
Yeah. But sometimes they do like hour-long sessions, like hours and hours. It's absolutely insane to me.
Yes, awesome.
I mean, okay, first of all, shall we debrief? From a writerly perspective, I feel like when you read our stories, first of all, they're very different. They came from the same prompt. They are very different. It proves, we didn't actually, I think it's worth mentioning that we didn't like say, oh, we're going to try and make them as different as possible. We didn't go in with that intention.
No, we just literally went in and be like, based on the prompt.
Yeah, because as you said, like the point was to kind of prove that, but we didn't collaborate on what each other were doing. The only time that I knew what you were doing was when you posted the TikTok with like the first like 5 lines in my awareness. After I'd already finished up my one at that point. And I sent you a voice note reading like 1 line We didn't go out of our way to be different. It just happened. Because we're different writers, so our styles are different, first of all.
Oh, yeah, I think you can tell just in the way like you describe and how I describe. It's very, very different.
And I think as well, like, you're primarily YA usually. Like, that's your focus typically. So as well, I feel like, because this is the thing. This is thing number one on the list. I always say like thing number one, and then I forget to like do numbers for the rest of the things. So sorry to everyone. But like, I think a huge part of who a writer is and the way that they write is the books that they read. I've recently, I've been thinking about this for a really long time, and I don't know the answer, but I keep having like moments of wondering who I am like as a writer, like in terms of my style, and I don't know. But I've always went for like one aim, and my friend said this to me the other day, and I was like, that is the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, because it's exactly what I want to hear. But he said that my writing is very accessible. Like, you don't, the way that I would say it is that I read a lot of books where the writing is elegant, but it's not necessarily difficult to read. Like, obviously there is a literacy crisis. I can't talk. I have a talking crisis. But like, despite that, the books, like, they're good and they're excellent. They're classics, you know, like The Bell Jar is a great book. The books that I've liked, for example, Flowers for Algernon, great book. Ayn Rand, like, these are books that I would say are not actually that difficult to read, because sure, you might have to look up a few words every now and then. Okay, you might have to look up a bit of like context if you're not familiar with the time period or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I think that there are a lot of modern classics that are really interesting and like have excellent writing that isn't overly flowery. And so I prefer books like that, and that means that my writing, it's not always that flowery. Sometimes it does get a bit, but like, I feel like if you read this bit, it's quite descriptive, but it's descriptive because of the nature of the story, it being a fantasy. Whereas in terms of like the actual stuff that it's not like super, like, it doesn't have like an excess of detail, I don't think. I mean, it's a first draft, so it, you know, first draft stuff, but I do feel like that shows, like, it's my writing, and it comes across very clearly as my writing.
Yeah, I think like the thing is, like, if I'm reading a book, I do not want to be looking up words every single like minute, because then what am I reading a book for? Like, if I wanted to learn something, I'd be reading a dictionary.
This is the problem that I've had with people reading R.F. Kuang, where they talk about how her books, you have to like prepare for them.
Oh yeah, no, you really don't.
No, when I was reading Babel,
it's not like, hard to read.
It really isn't. I was bored. Like, I was bored because it wasn't that complex to me. Like, I've read, and that's not a sort of criticism of the author. I haven't read many of her works. I haven't read Poppy War yet, even though I plan to. But like,
I think you might like that a bit more.
Yeah,
but
because it's more fantasy. But I feel like people really gave off this impression, and again, I do think it's related to the literacy rates being lower, that people, not only are they reading a lot more in theory, but they're not understanding it, and they're not engaging with it critically. And so they read something by an author who has a bit of academic experience, and I say a bit of academic experience, that's not, I know she actually is very educated, but like, they read somebody who has a brain and who writes books that aren't just, you know, slop, to put it mildly, and they find it complicated. And it's like, it's not a difficult story to read. Babel was, it was, I'm gonna say it, I didn't finish all of it, but from what I read, the conversation around colonialism was really basic. Like, it wasn't,
which is, it's what some people might need.
Yeah,
I
but
cut
it's
that out, like-
it's honestly so sad to me that people are like, well, Babel was a masterpiece and it dealt with these really complex themes, and I'm like, yeah, but it didn't. Like, you could read, for example, Wide Sargasso Sea, and you would get a more complex, in my opinion, colonialism story than Babel, and that's not even anywhere near as long. It's a retelling, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, of Jane Eyre. But I think it's set in the Caribbean, maybe, or somewhere. Where is it set? I haven't read all of it. I read a little bit of it. It's set in Jamaica. Okay. Which makes sense. It's a post-colonial novel based off of like Jane Eyre and like a retelling of it. And I just think like that is such an important part of the conversation. It might sound like I'm tearing down the soul, but I'm not. I am tearing down the fact that this author wrote a book that has a very minimal conversation around colonialism that deals with themes that are very complex in a not that in-depth way. Like, in my experience of what I read of the book, the first 100 pages, it honestly was just kind of like stuff that we learned in school. And yet people are talking about it like it's complicated. And I think that's really, really important to acknowledge, because it is important that people aren't understanding books. Because, like, for me personally, that is my method, is, like you said, people do need to be talked down to a little bit, but I do that in a way that isn't actually talking down to them. Like, I will explain things that need to be explained, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna guide them through everything. I actually have, if I pull up my Scrivener, which is currently loading, we have a few things, actually. The first is that it keeps panicking over my thing. I have a dedication and like a note on the text for my current draft, which is a World War II historical novel, where it explicitly says like, hey, this is based off of real events, but it's fictionalized people. It's not real people that I'm going to be writing about. And then I'm including a bibliography, and it's not a super serious bibliography. You'll see this in the recording. Blackadder is mentioned. But like I want people to be able to read my book and then also to go and do research themselves. When it comes to my Formula One book, there are things that I've changed. And I'm not going to say that I've changed them because it would be a spoiler, actually. I've thought about it because I do know that it's like, it couldn't be real in this world that we live in, but it's fine. But I also think that people, like, I tell you what DRS is, I give you some basic information, but like, you should be looking stuff up if you don't understand it. And that sounds kind of harsh in theory, because it's like, well, do it yourself. But that's how you get better at understanding things. That's how you get better. You don't know a word, you look it up. And then eventually you know the words without having to look them up. If I look at a word in a book and I haven't like, I know what it is and I know what it means, but I couldn't give you like an actual definition, I look it up anyway, so that next time I do know the definition. Not just the meaning, the definition. Because that's how you end up with people. There's an author at the minute who is like a book talker, pretty popular one.
I don't watch her. I feel like I've never watched her videos. I think she's like kind of like
not my kind of reader.
Yeah, I suppose people that like reading a lot of romance books.
I don't read a lot of
like romantic.
Yeah, and I think there's a certain type of book talk audience where you just know that you're not gonna, like, they're reading almost because it's popular. Like the books that they read, rather than necessarily because they want
that's what they enjoy.
Like, they do challenges and stuff, and like, you know what I mean. Like, they do it for content just as much as they do it for enjoyment. And I think that you can kind of tell that, like, oh well, you're never going to read something that I would read, really. But I think with her specifically, there have been a lot of criticisms of her book where it reads as if it's a first draft, which it basically is. She got a book deal for a book that she had written for the first time that she'd ever written anything, which we've been over this with other people. It's kind of frustrating from a writer's perspective to know that like that is happening, because I haven't read it. I'm not going to comment on it, but I do think that we need to encourage good quality work. Yes, sometimes there are books that I wouldn't personally read that I think are important. I think that it's like the genre of stories where they would have like a picture of a woman with a hand on a bare-chested man on the cover, and he has long hair like Fabio, you know? I think that those sorts of covers of books, they were really prominent, and they're not as much anymore because they've changed the way that they market that kind of book. But they've stopped marketing it as like a trashy book. And I don't say that as an insult. I say it because that's like the genre of book that has always existed, is like the idea of trashy romance and stuff. And I think that they're important. I think that they're important to the publishing space. And I think that they've always been important, especially to women as a readership. And I think that's important to acknowledge. But I also think that it's important to acknowledge that if you're going to publish somebody just because they are famous, you are still allowed to criticize their book for not being good. And, you know, they're not exempt from that criticism. I've seen a lot of people who've said that they are, who've said that it's fine that they get a book deal just because they're famous. And I think it's like, why aren't we challenging that? And I know that it probably sounds really bitter, but I just think it's all connected. The way that books by people who are famous are published, even if they're not good, even if the storylines aren't very in-depth. And look, I'm not the Michelangelo of writing, okay? I'm not saying that. But I feel like my short story that I've written here is genuinely better written than some of the stuff that gets published nowadays by professional publishing houses. And it's not good. Like, this was a first draft that I spent, like, I did this at like 11 p.m. I was like, I want to write this and I need to set it up on my computer so that I can write it with my proper spacing and stuff, because you can't on the Google apps, like on the Google Docs app, you can't do the indent, I don't think. So that irritates me because I like it. I'm used to that now. So I did it on my computer at like 11 p.m. because I was just like, well, while I'm here, I'll just write a bit. And then that came into me being like, well, I want to finish it now. So like, it's not that good. I'm going to say that. But also, it is better than some of the stuff. It has more effort put into it than some of the stuff. Not just because of the amount of effort that I put into the story, but because I have done my research. I've read books written by writers, not just on how to be a better writer, but on craft itself, on the meaning of it, on the passion of it. I read the journals of, it's called like Working Days, the Journals of the Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. And it's basically his journal that he kept, where he wrote like every day about, you know, what he was going to do in the day, how it went, blah, 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 how many sort of words he got done through the entirety of that book, which, by the way, The Grapes of Wrath was like a 2-draft story, and the second draft was just spelling errors. Is that not insane? That like changed something in my brain, hearing him being like, oh, I don't know if it's any good, I hope it is. And then knowing like that it's like one of the best, it's like one, I think it might be joint with my favorite book, With the Bell Jar, because it's just so excellent. And it's like, it makes me so mad that he wrote that in one draft. But like, that is the thing. He wrote that book after already having written loads of books. He had been involved in plays. He had been involved in films. He had already written like Of Mice and Men, had the film, the stage production of that. Like, this is a man who had put in, and I'm dominating the mic, so please feel free to jump in. But like, I feel like there's so much of this connection between the lack of good quality stuff being published to the point that like, I think it's the Pulitzer Prize and like other prizes have stopped giving them out every year because there just isn't a book that's good enough. So if there isn't a book that they think is good enough, they just don't give the prize out for a year. And like, that comes back to this conversation about influencers writing books. It comes back to, justifying a debut being bad. The Secret History was a debut book. And look, I gave that like a 2.5 stars. I didn't love it, okay? And there are going to be people who hear that and they're scandalized. But I'm not saying it was a bad book. I didn't enjoy it because there's like a 200-page stretch where it felt kind of boring and superfluous to what was needed. There are characters that I don't personally enjoy that much. But I'm writing my dissertation because I read that book and it was so easy for me to analyze it, and it was so interesting to analyze. Because regardless of what I think of it personally, it is a well-written book, and it was her debut. And it just makes me so mad.
It's like how you're like analysing my book in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that, like, I will say I'm not going to put myself on a pedestal, because I'm not like that. You know, I'm very humble.
It's really hard to do that.
I'm not going to, I will say, like, a lot of what I like in books, like, there was always a lot of depth in books that I liked. So I think you can see that in my writing, as my book's a very different romance book. Yeah, it's still got the romance in there, but like,
it's more about them.
Yeah, which is why, like, you know, why I'm trying to focus my marketing more about like the stuff that's different about it than what's not the same.
Yeah.
But you still got to put tropes in.
We've had so many conversations, and we did like the whole thing where like I talked about how I read a lot of it in a very Marxist way. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm a lit student. I'm on a 2-year, I'm calling it a sabbatical just for the fun of it. But it's a health thing. But basically, I have that brain that has been geared towards literary like analysis and criticism, because that's what I've always wanted to do with my, like, ever since I was a kid. I was like, that's what I'm going to do at university. That's what I'm going to do as like a job, I guess. And so when I read your book, I love feminism and I love Marxism as like theories of criticism specifically. Your book, it was so easy for me to do that. And that's, again, it's like you said, you like books that have more depth. So you write books that have more depth. You read different books than I read, apart from like the podcast. We have like quite different tastes. I like more literary stuff typically. I'm reading The Goldfinch right now. You didn't really like that. My feelings on it are complicated, to be honest.
It's just the fact, right? I think we should do an episode on The Goldfinch.
We could. I have a lot to say about it.
It's the fact that it's the concept of it that, like, she could have done so much with the concept of it. Like, I'm going to just go into mild spoilers about The Goldfinch. So basically, the main character, I can't remember his name because it was like over a year since I read it, but he is at a art museum when a bomb goes off and kills his mum. And the last painting that his mum was looking at was the Goldfinch. It is an actual painting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so he steals the painting. And like, there was so much she could have done with that concept. Like, I thought it was going to lead him into like a proper world of like art thievery or something a bit more exciting than doing drugs. How far are you in with it?
I've sent you a picture because you can see my notes as well, like on that. But
have you got the bit where he's gone to Las Vegas?
Yeah, I'm after that bit. But
so basically, all they do is drugs they just do drugs, the pair of them. That's all they do for like 500 pages.
The thing is, I get it. And I will say, like, I'm not enjoying it, but I think the reason why I'm enjoying it so much is because there's so much for me to make a note of. I actually, like, a lot of the notes that I've made, they're not just like underlines of stuff. There are so many, like all down the entirety of the page, I will write in the margins my thoughts, because there's so much for me to say about it in relation to my dissertation. There's so much for me to say about it from the perspective that I'm going into it with. And I think that's why I'm enjoying it more. Like, I think otherwise it would probably be like a 3 for me. But I think I see what you mean. Like, there's a lot. And I think that's the thing, right? Again, it didn't hit for you because of like the way that it went, but it's still a well-written book.
Oh yeah, there's no denying that.
Yeah, like it's and this is the thing, right?
Very like, complicated feelings on it.
When we criticize books, I think we are capable, and I say we, this is like the royal we, because I'm including a lot of people out there who maybe have no say in it, but I think that there is a lot of stuff on the internet right now about, as I said, criticism. And if I said to some people, I don't like The Secret History, they wouldn't even give me a chance to explain the valid reasons why. They wouldn't care that I had like a lot of things to say good about it, you know? They just wouldn't. And it's the same with like, I think a lot of literary criticism, people are afraid to be critical in general. Like, like they're not analysing stuff because they're afraid to think about anything for more than like, I enjoyed it or I didn't enjoy it. And it's so sad.
Yeah, see, this is why I like one of my favourite authors is V. Schwab, because like every book I've read by it, it's always different. The books are always different. I love it when an author has variety and doesn't write the same thing over and over again. Like, that's not the kind of author I want to be. I want to keep writing different things.
Just 1 second, sorry, I'm eating a biscuit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I love the variety of just writing different things, because like, why would you want to keep writing the same thing over and over again? Like, I'm sure that's what people enjoy reading, but like, I know a lot of romance authors, they just write romance. Colleen Hoover comes to mind.
See, that's part of, I think, the problem as well, right?
Why would you want to write the same thing over and over again? What's exciting?
She mostly reads romance, right? Again, I haven't seen much of it, but I'm pretty sure her
Wasn't she inspired by Sally Rooney or something?
Emily Henry.
Oh, they're two completely different genres.
But I think, like, you have the people who only read romance. And look, I'm not a romance reader. I'm not. I'm too asexual. I'm sorry. Like, especially, like...
Except in my case.
Well, I have... Oh, God. I have read a few. And the thing is, like, again, I first of all, I said before, I don't know if you heard, I said me when you were saying about authors who write like different genres. That is what I do. And like with the Formula One book, that is the book, by the way, I mentioned that it was like 1986, the same as your story. I, for viewers at home, published a like series of collages, like aesthetics, on Instagram and like TikTok. They're easier to find on Instagram though, so I would go there if I were you. Basically of my characters from my Formula One story, but if they were in the 80s. And it really inspired me because I was like, you know what, this is kind of a vibe. But I was saying to myself for this whole time since I did that, which was months ago, I think it was literally like the beginning of the year, I was like, I wouldn't write another book in that series. I wouldn't do like a prequel spin-off set in the 80s unless the story felt different. You've read the like the bit that I've got so far. Would you say that's quite different?
Yeah, it's very different.
So I feel like, and otherwise, like, I've got fantasy stuff that I want to write. I've got my World War II one that I'm writing at the moment, which is historical fiction. I've got my like romantic Romeo and Juliet tragedy one with my vampires. I've got like science fantasy. Like, I am diverse. You are diverse. And I think that's partially like, there are a lot of authors who are diverse. And there are a lot of authors who write really good stories, despite it not being like a genre that they get a lot of work done in. And I think it's like the Ali Hazelwood thing. Especially, I think I've seen a lot of people who've said that all of her characters are basically the same people. And that the romances are all basically the same thing. And that a lot of romances follow the same formula, and that the more that you read of a certain author, the less you like them. I've seen that criticism of Sally Rooney. I've seen some of that criticism towards R.F. Kuang, where people, they write like the same thing over and over with like no, they don't add stuff to it, you know?
Have you just looking at, you know, I've just looked in the writing Discord and the writing and the members, but look what Al's put. Oh, I don't know why that's just made me laugh.
So real. Honestly, though, that's the thing. Like, that literally proves our point, because it's a comment. Obviously, the viewers of this podcast aren't going to see it, but it's like a comment that was just made in our writing Discord about somebody writing a story that isn't necessarily going to be something popular now, But they're doing it anyway, and it's going to be good because of that.
Exactly. And we all know
Yeah.
And I bet it'll be great. And speaking of Camp Novel Bound, I'm definitely going to vlog that.
I am definitely too. Yeah. We can talk about that on the podcast actually at the end of the month as well.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Because I'm going to be doing a lot of vlogs. But that's the thing as well. Like, look, Camp Novel Bound, for anyone who isn't in the loop, it's basically like NaNoWriMo, but not dodgy. And so this is the thing. Okay, this is the point I was getting at. I've gotten off track. But basically my point is that you should read a variety of books. This was point 1 that I was trying to make 15 minutes ago, is that you should read a variety of books as an author. Because even if you only write in one genre, you can learn stuff from other, how did these other stories tell? Take a structure from a fantasy novel and put it into your romance. And it'll feel fresh, Yeah.
Well, when you think about it, reading itself is inherently political because books are political. Well, they wouldn't ban books, would they?
I honestly, I don't want to, but I am one of those people who I would find it really interesting to read Mein Kampf, because he was such an insane guy. And I'm not saying that from he was a bad guy. Obviously that's true. I mean, he was genuinely so crazy. His brain worked in a way that was just so typical dictator paranoia. I would be disgusted by it, I think, in a way that would make me feel physically repellent. Reading, I wrote a Substack article about famine as a use of genocide, and reading up on the research for his bit specifically was so awful because there's so much footage from that specific genocide that I feel that's the one topic that makes me I look at it and I just cannot. I have to stop because I get so shaky and weak, and so I know that I couldn't, but I would, because I think that it is important to read different views, especially if you are somebody who is going to be affected negatively by that from a personal perspective. If obviously reading somebody who is racist's book is gonna be bad because you are not a white person, don't do it. Obviously don't do that. But as a white person, I think it's really important that I do read stuff like that, so that I remember, you have to remember that people like that exist. And you have to understand how these books that they write are going to convince other people, perhaps subtly, to feel those things. You have to think critically about the work that you read as well as just reading widely. And that is my point. Because I read Atlas Shrugged this year, and it took me an age to finish. I don't agree entirely with the philosophy, but I think that there are also some interesting thoughts to it. And there was a lot of stuff in that book that I stopped and I was you shouldn't be saying that. But that's because it's an old book. And I think that it's just one of those things where it's again, people are so hesitant to criticize books by people that they like. They're so hesitant to criticize popular books for the sake of, doing well in the views. And it's become, we have to start, and I do, and I know that you do, but people, if you're listening to this, and I'm assuming that you already do this if you're listening, because let's be real, but it is so important to read critically because it helps your writing. It helps your brain. It helps you in every way. To go back to the story, because I could write a whole video essay about this topic. So for example,
that's an idea for you.
The word blanche. That is a word that I wouldn't have used when I was 10 years old, because I wouldn't have even known what it meant when I was 10 years old. But it's the word that comes to mind automatically. And the reason I bring that word up is because it's a really common word, but it's also one that isn't super common in a lot of the books that I think a lot of TikTokers are reading, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I feel it's about that thing of that is for me everyday vocabulary, because I read books that use words that aren't even necessarily that complex, but they are a step up from just what you would necessarily use. And this isn't a brag. Again, it shouldn't be a brag to be well read. It shouldn't be a brag. I wouldn't say I'm well read. Like I am, but I'm not, you know? I've read, I think, 57 books this year, give or take. But like, while most of them were what I would call very good, of very high quality, I also think that it's fair to understand that I DNF'd like 9 books this year so far. And it, like, those books mean just as much as the ones that I read all the way through. Because I got something out of them. Just like you can get something out of something written by a person who was very casually racist in it. Rebecca had casual racism, we discussed this. It was still a very interesting book, and the way that those racial dynamics are portrayed is important. And this is why I brought up like the thing of like the big controversial book, because you shouldn't be reading it for a joke. But if you care about history a lot, and I really do, it is something that's really important sometimes to read, even just like sections of, to understand exactly what was happening. And you have to think that way about everything that you read. Not everything like everything, but you have to, at least for like half of the books that you're reading, be capable of thinking about them beyond just, did I enjoy this? Did I not enjoy it? And I think that part of the problem is that now we have a generation of writers who are writing because they've read a bunch of books, but they haven't thought about those books critically. They don't understand why those books are good. They don't understand what makes those books not so good. They don't even want to consider that those books aren't good. And so they don't learn and they don't practice writing in an efficient way. It's like, again, I hate bringing this up so often, but it's like the Audrey Winter thing. You can write for years and years and years. You can write multiple drafts of the same book. Does not mean it is going to get better. You have to actually learn. You have to engage. And I feel like all of that, the reason why this is relevant to this podcast is because I'm aware that it sounds kind of like I'm going off track. I'm not, I promise. It is because all of that stuff influences how you write. I read very widely, but I read a lot of modern classics. I love modern classics. I want to do a modern classics specifically master's degree because it's really interesting to me. That's what I want to do a PhD in. It is just so much more interesting to me because a lot of modern classics are responsible for the way in which I write specifically, in that sort of, as I said, very accessible tone. But also just in general, it's like so influential because it transformed from the purple prose and the wordy explanations of like the Victorian era, for example, the Edwardians, into what we now know as more contemporary stories. And so I think that like when you look at my bookshelves and specifically you look at the books that I've loved, it makes sense how I write. It makes sense the level of detail I include. It makes sense the way that I use like the more evocative, descriptive language in the places where I use it. The description of the guy, the description of the pond gets far more description than the trees. She doesn't get described at all. You can imagine yourself in her shoes. You can imagine somebody in her shoes. There is no specific age that this is set in. Like you can you can get hints perhaps, but you can't necessarily just go, oh, this is set in this year. And I think that sort of level of detail comes from my influences as a writer, which are the people that I loved as a reader. And I engage with those people critically. I have a dissertation that I plan on doing, if possible, on Ayn Rand, because she has some really interesting books, and I think that there are so many things to discuss in them. Is she controversial? Yes. Do I recommend her to everybody? No. But I think that her work is so engageable with like how I am as a person. And that is what I think my point is that like all of this stuff, it all plays into each other, even if you don't think it does. And so you can be afraid, like, oh, what if somebody has the same idea? The way you will write it will be different based off of what you read. And it will be different depending on how you engage with that. The way that you read, the way that you engage with your reading, it does have an impact and it will make it different. And specifically, I think that a big thing to sort of remember is that it's not just about how you engage in like a, what do I think of this book? What is like the problems with this book from a literary perspective? What are the sort of implications socially, all that sort of stuff? It's how it makes you feel. Because if you get angry at a book that isn't supposed to make you angry, chances are you're going to end up feeling like you've got to kind of correct for the, shall we say, not quite socially correct way that it portrayed a certain group of people.
Yeah.
Like,
see, while you've been on about this, right, I've just been thinking about, so, like, if you want the good news, I've passed my master's degree. Mm-hmm. Yay. So, like, my degree is, like, obviously is creative writing. So what we've looked at a lot of is different books and how they deal with, like, certain subjects and how they deal with them. So while you've just been talking about this, I've just been remembering, I read a book for my course called Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee, I think that his name's pronounced like that. And this is actually a modern classic. And it's also the reason why he was chased out of South Africa.
I love books that have a history like that.
Yep. I think it's something you'd be very interested in. It deals a lot with racism, and because it's set after the apartheid in South Africa in the 90s. So the main character is I hated being in his head, because you are in his head most of the story. So it made me really uncomfortable to read, but it just goes to show you've got to read books like this that make you uncomfortable, or else you're never really going to learn anything.
Do you know what? It's the Lolita conversation, isn't it? How there are people who are like, this book is disgusting, it romanticizes. What book did you read? Like, sorry?
Yes, so I'll just send you the blurb, because it depends on if you're interested in the subject, but honestly, yes, he's, like, it deals a lot with racism because he's a white author writing about this, and I think the reason why I got chased out is because of how controversial the book was. But like, you can just tell the way the main attitudes to obviously people of colour are set from this main character.
Yeah.
Even like with Rebecca, like just the casual racism of the time, like,
it's important.
If we were reading that in the 30s, it would probably be normalised.
Yeah, you wouldn't even think reading it, laughing at it, like.
Yeah. Reading it now is it really, that's what it caught. I love how it caught us both off guard, because it's such not a normalized. It's so not normalized anymore.
It's good to react that way. And do you know what I'll say as well? It's really important because, like, for example, in the Narnia books, there is a lot of very casual racism in those books. And
you've seen the first edition of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah. And the thing is, look, it is important to acknowledge that existed. It is important to.
Oh yeah, definitely, because it did exist.
Yeah, it was published in a climate where that was like acceptable to be published, and even books now. I have seen so many authors get flamed for releasing books that people are like, "Hey, why did you depict people this way?" And it's like, we need to have these conversations because it's important. And that's like the whole point of what I was saying earlier, right? Where it's like, people are afraid to have those discussions. And I say people are afraid. There are a lot of people who aren't afraid. We're definitely not. But like, I just think it's so frustrating to see online when people are like, oh, well, you can't criticize Haley Pham for writing a subpar book and getting it published. And it's like, well, yeah, I can actually.
Well, yeah. The fact she's probably got publishing deals because she's got an audience, so they know it's sell because publishing is the market. But then you've got the other side of the conversation where it's like things will be criticised because everybody has different tastes. Like,
you nothing is perfect. Reviews for a book that you loved removed just because it is a negative review. These the people who are defended, like they'll be like, the Powerless series is nothing like those books that you're claiming it plagiarized, and it's like, babe, Please.
But it is.
It's literally like they're scene for scene.
I don't even like Red Queen that much, and it's
like it's the indignation of an author being slighted and nothing being capable of being done about it. It's just, but like that's the thing. You cannot have a conversation where you deny reality. You can like the book. You can like a book that is written by an author who objectively isn't the best writer in the world. You can like a book that objectively has a lot of weaknesses in the plot and the characters and stuff like that. But you can't defend it and say that it's objectively better than these people think it is. These people with valid criticisms. And you can criticize my favorite books. And I'm not going to judge you. I think I didn't criticize a friend. He didn't like my favorite film of all time as much as he liked a different one. And he gave a reason, and I gave a sort of reason that like a counter argument. And he saw where it came from, because I had thought about it a lot. And I had like thought about this one reason as like the main reason why I love the film so much. And so he was able, even if he doesn't fully believe that, and even if he doesn't like it as much as the other one still, he was able to understand my perspective. That is how conversations should go, regardless of whether you're friends with somebody or you're a stranger. You should be able to engage with media and be willing to have people not like something that you love. And it's
especially
so depressing.
Yeah, and I've just been thinking, right? Did I ever tell you about what? So, like, I had this idea when I was about 16, like, for a book about well, I think originally it was a romance book, but like so it starred like a grandfather telling a story about like his wife who was in the army or something like that. And I think a little bit was going to be, I was 14 or 15, it was like a little bit of it was going to be about criticism of like the army itself and like, to do with things like that. But the fact that the main character, Jamie, was a young carer, like that's a very different
specific
thing that you don't see. Oh, I mean, Jack and Wilson did inspire me a lot, but like I was just thinking like a lot to do with that young carer conversation. The fact that he's only got carers coming in once or twice, and he's still having to do all of this work for his mum, and he's not being a kid. So it's a little bit about the criticism of the system as well itself.
I think that there's like
you've got to put stuff in your work where like if there's got to be at least some themes. But it's even like with romance books, like they all have themes of. I think I remember where I saw someone was saying I read for fun, and she was like, but it doesn't have any themes. And then there was a TikTok comment that said, but if like the main character in the book had to buy it set in America, they had to go pay for medicine, and it's like
that is a theme.
That's a theme. Like you still, even if you're not doing it subconsciously.
Like this book, it's not my favorite book ever, but I have so many notes in the margins because I'm like, this thing could be a relation to this. This could connect to this other book that she wrote. And that is the most interesting thing. I had never read The Goldfinch or The Little Friend before I decided to do the dissertation on them. However, I read The Little Friend and I sharpened my focus based off of what I read in that book and how I thought that I would be able to sort of write a lot about this one specific topic, because you have to make your topic a little bit less broad. So I did that. And now reading this third book, it is really interesting to see how much there is for this one specific theme across 3 books that she has published within, I think, like 16 years. And they're her only books. And they have similar themes. And in some books, one is more prominent than the other, but there's like an undercurrent that goes through all of them. And it's so interesting to think about that. And so if you are reading, and that's the thing that, like, if you're reading the same author and you're reading all of their books and they're releasing romance books that are hockey romance, for example, that's a very popular one, maybe think about them a bit deeper. Think about what threads are shared by the stories. You don't have to dislike the book. Maybe you'll find these similarities and you'll be like, oh, actually, now that I think about it, maybe it's not so impressively written if it's got the exact same plot as this other book that the same author wrote or something. But like, you can still enjoy the same thing. I can still enjoy every series of Supernatural, even if it objectively was kind of terrible. Like, yeah, I can still criticize it, because you don't have to love it's not unconditional love.
No, I mean, with the early seasons of Supernatural, you can tell that it's got more of a story because they're a lot darker.
They kind of lost the plot, I think, with Supernatural. Like so many of these shows.
Seasons, no wonder they did.
Yeah, with so many different shows, you can tell that they went on longer than it was supposed to. And I think it's the same with books. You know, an author.
Riverdale.
Yes, that one is.
I've never seen it. All I've ever seen is clips. I'm like, what?
I watched the first
watching it. I was like, what are you watching?
Literally, like the first 3 episodes I watched when it was super popular, just to see, and I was like, this is kind of boring. And then I would see stuff from it, and I'd be like, what the hell?
Why have they got superpowers?
Why are they witches? Like, get out. And it's just so dumb. But it's like, that's the thing. I can criticize media that I love, and that is what, like, people are like, oh, you think you're better than me because you read these books. No, I think I'm better because I'm actually literate. And that's not a criticism of you unless you are choosing to stay literate by refusing to engage with things. Like, if you're choosing to do that, if you have access to books and you buy them and you read them and you don't take them in and you don't think about them, I'm going to judge you for that. Because, like, it blows my mind that people can just not think about things. That people can say, like, oh, well, that doesn't affect me, so I don't care that I'm voting for this bad person. It's so irritating. And it's like, it is having a real world effect. Dictators love stupid people, and they admit that very freely. So why are we choosing to remain stupid? And, like, again, I'm not going to blame people for being ignorant if they are just ignorant, if they don't have the money to go to, like, buy books and stuff, if they are not encouraged to read, if they're not encouraged to have that critical thinking skill. But I will judge the people who criticize valid reviews, being like, hey, look, this is what happens and this is why it's not that good. If you criticize that review just because you like the book and you say, well, nuh-uh, I'm judging you. Like, I'm sorry. You're either 13 and you're hopefully going to grow out of it, or you just need to do the growing yourself. Like, you need to. And it's hard to have this conversation because it sounds really harsh. And in a way, again, it is harsh, but it's realistic. Like, you can't ignore critical thinking skills. And it's so important as a writer because, like, our stories are very different, but they're very different because our focuses have different things. Because currently you're writing a fantasy story and I'm currently writing a historical fiction and plotting, yes, a fantasy, but I'm primarily, like, I've mostly finished that. So I'm mostly plotting my Formula One series. And again, the reason I'm doing a prequel is because I thought of a story that is very different and that I thought would be very interesting for a different theme. You know, one of similarity to the original story, but with, like, you could read it on its own and it wouldn't mean anything. Like, to like have read that first or to read it afterwards. Like, it wouldn't matter if you'd never read the other book. That is what I'm going to write for that. And I think there are some authors who you can see that they're doing stuff just because they can get money from it. And I'm not going to shame them for that. You don't get a lot of money as a writer, most often than not.
Nope.
But it is just so frustrating when people praise, like, the 15th book in a series, which is, like, the same plot as, like, half of the books in the series, because there is no new plot. There's no new characters. These characters have gone through different growth across, like, a 15-year period, and yet they're still the same character because the writer is afraid of making them different because people won't like them as much. Like, you can see that stuff. And basically, again, the point of this is that you can write the same thing and it will be different. And this is why. And it sounds like it's not related, but it all is. And that's the point, is that it's all related. Everything that you do as a writer, as a reader, everything that you do as a human being in your life, it all impacts the way that you write stories, the things that you focus on, the themes that you include subconsciously, consciously. It really is, like, so simple. And yet so many people who are writers don't read diversely. They don't engage critically. They don't try to grow themselves as writers by writing different things. You don't have to publish it. You don't have to have it be good. Try writing from a different perspective. Try writing in a different tense. Try writing like a different genre just for the sake of pushing yourself. I'm on my 3rd book this year, and I have grown so much as a writer from writing so many different books. And the writing that I did on this short story for a first draft, it's evident that this isn't a short story that was written by somebody, I think, who's like just written something for the first time. And it's like the same with you. Like we wrote first drafts, and I feel like
you've listened to some of my old stuff. Oh,
but that's the thing. Growth. Purposeful
It's
growth.
so bad.
You cannot just write and hope that you get better. You have to push your boundaries. You have to push your
I would
boundaries
have
as a
hoped I
reader.
got better. I went to school for writing. I hope I got better.
Yeah, you've literally you've been educated. I just think it's so many people seem to think that they're doing all right and they don't have the edge to do better. Keep pushing. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because we're at the hour and a half.
Oh yeah, maybe we should wrap this up.
But I just think that, yeah, basically the point of this whole episode, and I'm so sorry for talking so much, but it was that, you can write the same prompt as somebody else and it'd be very different. And these are the reasons why. And those reasons, they're gonna make it so different that it's not even you can't even look at it and see that it's the same prompt that led you writing those stories. So this is a bad example because it's a short story and it's a very specific premise. But if you have a book that's about vampires and you're thinking, well, that's been overdone, isn't it? No, because yours is a different take. And as somebody who reads widely and engages with media, you will know that.
And I know I like this. See, our reading taste is very broad.
Yeah.
I will read something if it has an interesting concept. I'm listening to the audiobook of Wayward Houses. What's it called?
Wayward Girls, Magic of...
Yeah, and it's supposed to be a horror book. I don't think it's very good.
Witchcraft for Wayward Girls.
That's it. I don't think it's very good.
That's a shame. I
know, but I don't DNF, do I? I am going to... I think I'm about halfway. I think I'm about 70% done. I'll be done with it soon.
I do DNF. As I said, I've DNF 9 books this year. And I do think that, again, that's different. You stick through books that you don't like, so you're more likely to learn from the mistakes that they make. I can still do that, but again, it'll be at a different level. This is why it's just so important to be yourself, but don't be comfortably in yourself. Push yourself, even if it's just for your own eyes, because it will grow your skills as a writer, it will grow your skills as a reader, and it will make the world a better place because people need to stop being stupid. And it sounds blunt, but it's true. It kind of got away from us, mostly me. I'm so sorry. I'm so bad at... But yeah, thank you for listening. It felt like a very quiet rant.
I think sometimes you need to, though.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of stuff for authors who are very popular, whose books, in my opinion, just don't seem that good.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't judge them out loud. But I do think it's very frustrating to see the fan response.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
But yeah, thank you for listening. The next episode, we will be reading The Princess Knight. I can't remember their name. Caitlin? Kate something. Kate Jacobs. That's the name.
I just want to say it's North Irish because a lot of the book is with Irish names.
I think it's based off of mythology. Yeah.
Okay.
The names definitely are.
Oh yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they're American because they, the author went to a Ren fair to do promotion, and they were on American news with stuff. So, but yeah, we're going to be reading that. It's a fantasy book, which is quite different. I don't think we've covered a fantasy except for like interviews. Like this isn't an interview one. It's just, which is
Just
fun.
the discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first like trad published fantasy story, which is based off of like Legally Blonde, by the way. So,
which I've only ever seen clips of, but I know the general premise. Yeah,
you need.
I know what the concept is.
Yeah, but you need to. I'm sorry. This is like you have to see the whole thing. I love that film so much. Elle Woods is one of the characters who I would say is not an inspiration for Natasha, but like the ability to be so unapologetically feminine in everything that she does, even in like a male-dominated field. That is the vibe. Like I want all of my characters to be that cool. Sorry,
yeah,
I just love
early
it.
2000 rom-coms are the best.
They really are. Also, it's Luke Wilson, isn't it? Which is fun. But anyway, yeah, that's the next episode. So yeah, please do stick around for that. And if you did stick around for all of this, thank you. It's a really long one. Like,
yeah.
But yes, we will speak to you next week. Dulcet tones across the airwaves. Sorry, I'm just. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Bye.